Literary Festival Day 2. And we have two amazing speakers for this session, Amish and Bhavna Roy. And in conversation with the two of them would be Mani Rao. Very quickly, Amish, of course, it's very easy for me to say that he doesn't need an introduction, but it's my responsibility to briefly talk about Amish. Amish currently is a diplomat, author, columnist, and he has taken over as the director of the Nehru Center in London in October 2019. And he, as some of his fans just told him, he published his first book in 2010 and has written 9 books till date. And he's obviously one of the best-selling authors in India today. Sold more than 5.5 million copies and translated into 10 Indian and 9 international languages. So the book that we are going to discuss this evening is Dharma, his latest book, Dharma, Decoding the Epics for a Meaningful Life, which he co-authored with his sister Bhavna Roy. And Bhavna is also with us here. We are very happy to see both of you here. And Bhavna was educated in Mussoorie, Pune, and Mumbai. And after graduating in psychology from Mumbai University, she worked first as a volunteer in a school for special children, and later on in an NGO in Nashik called SOS. And this is a book that she co-authored with Amish. And this afternoon, we are very delighted to see both of you here. Imagine Amish is joining us from London, and the moderator, Mani Rao, is joining us from Varanasi. And so this is what technology can enable us. And Mani Rao, the moderator for this session, is herself a very well-known poet, translator, and scholar. And she has several collections of poetry. And her translations from Sanskrit include the Bhagavad Gita and Kalidasa. And her latest book, Living Mantra, Mantra, Deity, and Visionary Experience Today, has just come out in 2019. So wonderful to have all three of you at HLF, Mani, Bhavna, and Amish. And I hand it over to Mani now. And I'll come back with audience questions about 15 minutes before the end or so. Okay. Thank you very much. And now between you and the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vijay. Please remind us of the time as we come closer to the finish.
When I appear, it means that we are in the last 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Amish and Bhavna, absolutely wonderful to meet you virtually. Namaste. And I've enjoyed reading the book. I believe this is your second book of nonfiction, although I would say if the first book of nonfiction is a collection of your writings, this one as a themed book is more like a first book of full-length nonfiction. But I know that all your previous writings have been, the mythology, fiction. Could you tell us a little bit about this change of gear? Why this shift? I'm sure that your readers and listeners will want to know that first.
I think Didi may say this story a lot better, but let me just briefly explain it from my end. I follow the Indian storytelling style a lot more, which and our ancestors, their belief was that stories are essentially a wrapper for philosophies that you want to convey, and that's how I've written most of my fiction. Actually, all my fiction books as well. The Shiva trilogy had various philosophies, but the philosophy at the heart of it was an answer to this question: what is evil? It should be a very easy answer in Sanskrit, but in our modern this thing, it becomes a discussion. Ramchandra series, the philosophy at the heart of it is a discussion on what is an ideal society. Again, the answers aren't simple. There are various choices that you make. Each choice has strengths and weaknesses. And Suhel Dev, Legend of Suhel Dev, is my exploration into the Hindu-Muslim question. and what India has experienced, or rather suffered, in terms of the invasions. First the Turks and the Europeans, and how do we make peace with them? So there are always philosophies at the heart of it, and the stories are a wrapper. So in a way, it's a two-step process. First the philosophies, and then second the story in the form of the wrapper to convey those philosophies. So non-fiction in that sense is something closer to the heart, because it is step one. It is the philosophy straight up. And there couldn't be a better partner than Bhavna Di to do this, because in our family everyone reads a lot. I don't know, some of my readers think I read a lot. Trust me, you haven't met Didi. Didi is the one who reads the most in the family. She's the most intelligent in the family. And many of the philosophical discussions that actually go into the books would be with her often, that I would have. So therefore, it was, kind of obvious that perhaps the two of us would work together on this book. Didi, if you have anything to.
So, Mani, really, this project began way back in 2013-14. Amish had already released his Meluha series, Meluha Nagas and Vayuputras. And, we are a typically, raucous, conversational Indian family. And this was the result of an evening of discussion on the philosophies behind Amish's book. The discussion veered towards really Murti Pujan and idol worship. But my brother Anish suggested to Amish and I to write a book on philosophies behind, Amish's writings. I was the one who began the effort, and I had written precisely 20 pages. And I sent those 20 pages to Amish, and really, he said this is philosophy step one, but his magic created the step two, which is the conversational setting of this, this book, because my 20 pages were, as he very, very respectfully and correctly told me, not very readable. It was very theoretical, not practical at all, and not reader friendly. He took over the project and he created this very, very interesting family of, this old couple, daughter and son-in-law, not son and daughter-in-law, but daughter and son-in-law. I thought that was a wonderful twist. Suddenly my 20 pages had come to life, because there was point, there was counterpoint, there were arguments, there were discussions, there were disagreements, and really those 20 pages had been brought to life. The manuscript went to and fro, more than a couple of times, and then it was really shelved, Mani, for some, personal reasons. COVID times came as an opportunity. Frankly, during COVID times, what was given to this manuscript was the finishing touches and really the amazing editing work of our editor, Karthika. And the result is, this book, Our Child.
Very, very interesting. Yeah. Actually, to pick up from what both of you have said, Amish was talking about how the stories themselves are like wrappers, and the concept is already, there's a nugget and there's a heart of a concept within each of the series. Like Ramchandra series is about the ideal society, and the Shiva trilogy is about evil, etc. Now, even in this book, I noticed repeatedly the characters of the family are talking about how don't look at these characters as characters. When they talk about a character from the Mahabharata or the Ramayana or from your books, don't look at them as characters, look at them as virtues. Don't get attached to these characters, look at them as virtues and vices, and as a scope for playing out sort of the questions of dharma. But these stories are actually itihasa for all of us. They are real stories, so to speak. Do you feel you're reducing them to like a morality play kind of thing? I mean, of course it's more complicated than morality plays, but how do you feel about that? Just taking out little lessons from them and removing the reality from it. That I'm just asking.
Yeah, no. Interesting question, Mani. Um, One of the things that we have spoken of repeatedly, and I do wish scholars would analyze our itihasas, our Puranic stories, our Adikavya uh, to 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 really look at the evidence that exists for the fact that much of it is actually our history. I do believe that. But one of the things that again comes down from our ancestors is this, that the only thing in our control is our actions. Right? When I said that thing about what is evil, we wouldn't even need that discussion if we were speaking in Sanskrit, because Vedic Sanskrit doesn't have a word for evil. Vedic Sanskrit doesn't have a word for, Adharma is not evil, you know that. Vedic Sanskrit doesn't have a word for blasphemy either, because you're supposed to question and think and understand. Vedic Sanskrit doesn't have the word for judgment either, the way modern English defines it. Where God will judge who will go to heaven, who will go to hell. We didn't have that concept. It was because we benefited or suffered the consequences of our own actions from the previous lives or this life. We decided what will happen to us. So therefore, then the nub of the entire discussion is this. What is the point of looking at those stories, and what is the point of the life that we live in this Mayavi world? What is the point of engaging with everyone else when we've been told there is no point judging someone else because you're not in control of their actions? Okay, they will benefit or suffer the consequences of their actions. The only thing in our control is our karma. So therefore, the lesson always to us was don't judge, learn. Right? Look at others and learn and apply those lessons in your own life. Okay.
So which
That is
actually
the
takes us, sorry, that takes us
that is the way not just to look at our ancient stories. It is the way to look at everyone we engage with as well. Everyone we engage with is an opportunity to learn, right? And apply that lesson in your own life. Make yourself, I would hesitate to use the term better, but make yourself more productive in this life, so that you're better prepared for your next life, or hopefully for moksha. So therefore, then even these stories, the perspective is learn, right? What can we learn from them? What can Lord Ram teach us? What can Lord Krishna teach us? What can Duryodhan teach us? What can Ravan teach us? There's something to be learned from everyone. That is the approach we've taken in this book. That essentially look at this as learn.
interesting. Now, I mean, that takes us to the whole idea of dharma, which you've really located right at the beginning of the book. And you talk about how that, you link it with Sanatana Dharma and cosmic harmony and order, and almost like arriving at a certain state of perfection in the stage of one's evolution, and taking that as an ideal. Then you've sort of filtered these stories through an ethical sort of lens and tried to extract discussion out of that, which is really very interesting when you look at specific characters. I find in the last decade especially, there's been so much of sort of engagement with mythology overall in our country, and whether it's revising stories, whether it's questioning certain aspects in fiction, whether rewriting, there's been a lot of, a lot more of attraction around that. You're approaching a similar idea by opening up questions in a more sort of direct discussion format in this book, rather than trying to code it through another story. Am I right? Is that what you're doing? Just taking it head on, like you take Yudhishthira, you take Karna, Kumbhakarna, you take all these characters, and as well as the characters from your own stories, and then you're bringing up questions of dharma versus swadharma. How does karma lead to following? Doing karma leads to the right dharma, etc. Am I right? Is that what?
I think you've got it spot on. The only thing is we try our best, or at least we've attempted, not to make it prescriptive, because that's not the Indian way in any case. Who are we to say that you should do this? That was never the Indian approach. We kind of put the discussions forward and then leave it to the reader's intellect to to decide for themselves. Bhavnadi, if you want to add to that. But the point of the conversational style is primarily that, to put point, counterpoint, and don't make it prescriptive. That is not the Indian style, that you have to do this, is this, then you'll go to heaven or you'll go to hell. That's not the Indian style. Sorry, Didi.
No, I completely agree with you. It's an effort at exploration. Amish and I are exploring, searching, and sharing our experiences. To that extent, it's a very humble effort to ourselves understand Dharma and Karma.
No, in that sense, it's actually a very new direction overall in this subject, because you're bringing it to the forefront. It's not something that's just left in one's mind as you're just in the privacy of your own mind. You might ask questions about why did Rama do this, or you have those questions and interrogation. Instead, you're bringing it into a conversation of a family. You've created an imaginary family, and then you're sort of like wrestling with some of these points. But also very, very interesting, I found, is that you've made some rather bold, I won't say judgments, but I will say speculations, kind of sometimes veering towards the judgment also. Like, for example, when the whole question of Bhishma's celibacy comes up, and you've been very categorical in saying that, look, that was actually not the right choice for his swadharma. That is a very, very interesting point, and I would love it if you could discuss that, both of you. And how did you arrive at that?
Sure. If I can just give one aspect of this, then then Bhavnadi, please feel free to add. One thing that we've attempted to do in the way the book is structured, which is very different from the way at least the modern concept of non-fiction books have been, which comes more from the Western paradigm. Because modern non-fiction is very much in the realm of an author will set up a hypothesis and then write the entire book to support that hypothesis. So there is he clearly picks, usually the model is, he clearly picks one side and then his task is to convince others of that side, which is very different from the way Indian philosophical texts used to be written. There was a reason why many of the Upanishads, many of the commentaries, many of them were written as conversations. They were never written as, this is the hypothesis, my task is to convince you of that hypothesis. And the entire point in conversations is that you present points, counterpoints, you present different points of view, and depending on every character, they would come from their background, so the way I'm not just talking about Nachiket in our books, but even in the Upanishads, the way a Nachiket would ask questions to Yamaraj would be defined by the background he came from, and how he had reacted. You remember how he reacted to his father. So the entire point of presenting it through these points and counterpoints was to show different points of view, right? So that, again, coming back to my earlier point, that is not prescriptive. Unlike the traditional, or rather modern non-fiction Western books. When it comes to Bhishma Pitama, again, this is the view of the elder characters on this. And they see it as this is a classic debate that how do you judge whether a karma has been positive or not, right? And that's one of the most difficult things to do, which is why many of our ancestors gave up the task of judgment. But you look at the consequences of those actions in the future. It is perhaps a counterfactual, but we can debate if Bhishma Pitama had not taken that vow, would the war of Mahabharata even have happened? Right? Another point of view is, should you look at the actions as the actions by itself, or should you look at the intentions behind those actions? And does that define whether that action is dharmic or not? Right?
So was it
And we speak of the lion and the deer example on that. And we look at the concept of sacrifice from that perspective, because the thing with sacrifice is that whenever the way our culture is, whenever anyone does any sacrifice, it automatically puts that person up on a moral high platform. And coming from the concept of nothing should be beyond question, should we question that what are the consequences of that sacrifice and what are the reasons behind that sacrifice? And we discussed the vow of celibacy that even Parvateshwar makes in the Shiva Trilogy, and his reasons are different, right? Because he is protesting against an unfair law, and for that he took up the vow of celibacy, a law that is discriminating against others. He's protesting against that. Okay, the reasons for the sacrifice are different. Whereas Bhishma Pitama, the sacrifice that he makes, is because his father, his father had already experienced all the rasas of life, right? His father fell in love once again, right, at an old age. And the woman that his father fell in love with, and the woman's father, made what you can say was perhaps an unfair demand. Because Bhishma Pitama, one thing which everyone would agree on, would have made a very good king. And in our Indian way, being a king is not a right, it is a duty, right? It's your duty to take care of your people. If you know you can take care of your people, then is it a dharma not to take care of your people and withdraw from the throne, right? Just because your father fell in love once again at an old age. It's a question we put up. Because what is the perspective? What does a ruler exist for? It's one of the things that's discussed even by Thiruvalluvar. A ruler exists for the good of his people. That's his primary duty. That is his primary dharma.
So he goes against dharma by...
And then again, the debate comes, family or people. What should you choose? Now, we've had this debate, many times. Lord Ram also was confronted with this. Many things were confronted with this. And what is the correct choice? That's what we put up. Didi, if you want to add to this.
And it's interesting, you keep saying Pitama every time you say Bhishma, which is very nice because you have the perspective that this was not dharmic. At the same time, with respect, Bhishma Pitama.
Yeah.
Very good.
One of the things which Didi says so beautifully, that in our proper ancient Indian way, there's nothing wrong with disagreeing. There is something wrong with being disagreeable. Right? Even when you disagree, you must do it with respect. There's that lovely line from the Natya Shastra, right? Satyam Bruat, Priyam Bruat, Na Bruat Satyam Apriyam. They don't advise us to speak untruth. Of course not. You must speak the truth. And no one can know what the universal truth is. Ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. Right? You must speak your truth, what you think is the truth. But you must speak it with love. And if you cannot speak it with love, then don't speak it. But if you are going to speak it with love. But don't speak something that you yourself don't believe is true. At the same time, don't force your truth on someone else. They have a right to their truth. But put your point of view across.
Satyam is
Didi,
not
sorry.
different.
Didi, sorry. I've taken up most of the thing. Didi, if you want to add something to it.
No, what I'd like to say is it was very interesting hearing your question, Mani, because maybe that can be, one of our humble aims to be able to showcase the ability to engage in respectful conversations. Points, counterpoints, respectful conversations that are laced with humor, that knows how to laugh with and not laugh at. Conversations that also reflect the ability to listen respectfully. I think, this has been a good attempt to showcase that. Having said that, these lovely stories of ours, they have survived millennia for multiple reasons. At one level, no doubt, indeed, they are our itihas. At a deeper level, they serve as tools for us to be able to mirror our inner drama and our inner universe of being. We all have, a malignant and treacherous corner within ourselves. And we all have a divine, pure, and beautiful other corners also within ourselves. These magnificent characters enable us to, at one level, to begin with, understand ourselves, find the courage to dig into those malignant and treacherous corners within ourselves that we desist from, going into and examining and even acknowledging. After that, see others for what they are and who they are, really, truly develop the ability to step into the shoes of others, not only with compassion, but also sometimes with the need to be alert, aware, and careful. When we reach the place where we truly understand ourselves and begin to understand people around us, we can make more informed decisions as to how much and whether to involve people in our life or to manage people in our lives, live life more purposefully, more meaningfully, and with greater wisdom. These stories enable us. This is what these characters are for. Not judging, but understanding. Through them, understanding our own, the games we play with ourselves, the covers that we create for our own personalities, the way we like to imagine we are. We all want to feel good about ourselves. Find the courage from these magnificent characters to really arrive at a deeper self-understanding and other understanding.
No, excellent. Really, I really appreciated wonderful dialogue and conversation going on throughout the book, raising these questions about Bhishma, about Gandhari, asking about Swadharma and Dharma, and sort of distilling all these moments where all these choices happen, regardless of whether the narrative is already set and fixed as to that is what happens in our itihasa, and still entering it and asking these questions. It was very interesting. I also appreciated that you had the summaries of some of the stories, from Shiva Trilogy and from Ramchandra series, so that when those characters are then brought into whether it is Parvateshwar or, your comparison of Ganesh and Karna, then, one sort of starts to think about, oh, wait a minute, this is really decoding a broader story, and that all these stories and characters are sort of like signaling other values for us to think about. And that's a very interesting direction, I think, in this field of sort of mythological fiction. So thank you. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what are bona fides?
Didi, you should answer this.
That was my husband's favorite word.
Yeah.
That remains a mystery because I was like, what is a bona fide?
As opposed to malified.
Okay.
The same act, can be the result of its intentions, and intentions are so difficult to decode. The same act can be a result of, a bona fide or a malified intent. I may be looking after you, even maybe because I can devise a selfish interest, from that effort, or I can do it, with a sense of complete having otherized myself and doing it with no negotiatory angle in my own eyes. Charity. Charity is such a, interesting concept. Sudha Murthy ji mentioned the other day when she was in conversation with Amish that, you scratch my back, I scratch your back kind of charity is not charity, it's not dhanam, because that's negotiation. If I look after, my staff members, family, and define it as charity, it's really charity. Because at a surface level, surely it is, because there are many who don't even do that. But let's dig a little deeper. Is there an angle of negotiation in it? So then I am digging a little deeper and examining my bona fides.
Sankalpa.
Yeah, what are my bona fides in looking after, my cook's father? Is it pure charity, or is it also negotiation? This can be a very interesting, dialogue, self-talk that you can indulge in, and dig into the true bona fides of your action.
So
Where are you taking the intention?
And if I can add to that,
yeah,
sorry.
Please. No, please.
Yeah, if I can just add to that. Oh, sorry.
This is what happens on Zoom. We're all in different screens and we don't know who is talking.
Who's talking? Okay. So I was just saying also, just to add to that, one of the things I think perhaps, and most Indians understand this instinctively, no one is in complete control of the result, right? I might try my best, things don't work out because there are so many factors, right? Which go into it. What I'm in control of is the efforts I put in. More importantly, the intentions I come with. Okay, if those intentions are malified, then even if the results are achieved, is it really dharma, right? But if the intentions are noble and I'm trying my best, sometimes things work out, sometimes don't. What is in my control are my intentions.
So in
And
a
you
sense,
notice most Indians understand this, and you see it in voting behavior, for example. Do you notice that often Indians will vote for a politician where even if all the results didn't turn out right, where they say, bande ke intentions sahi hai, he tried his best, some things worked out, some things didn't, right? Indians kind of almost instinctively understand that, right? Because that's what is in our control, our intentions. Are we trying our best? Do we have bona fides in what we do?
And intentions, interject, money, intentions are such a, rollicking ride, because, intentions can be multi-layered and all of them are equally applicable, So it is so befuddling. Now, how brave are you? Which intention are you going to, dig into? Do you have the courage to encounter your inner serpent?
and when there's a story already, it's behind a certain action, like when you talk about loyalty came because of indebtedness. But you talk about how Kumbhakarna's loyalty came out of his love for his brother. So these are, I mean, fascinating to think about as to what was behind somebody's actions, and then to look at the consequence and try and sort of distill that through analysis, I suppose.
Yeah, and if you can look inside and look at your intentions with honest eyes, perhaps your actions will improve as well. If Karna was genuinely a noble man, okay, he was a noble man, but he did some things which he shouldn't have done. Uh, and why did he do it? Often out of blind loyalty to Duryodhan, again, he ended up doing things which he shouldn't have done, despite being a very noble man, right? So can loyalty end up being a slippery slope? And will you be able to arrest that slope if you're looking at yourself dispassionately, honestly, and looking at your intentions? Now, you might still not have a choice. Kumbhakarna was so deeply in love with his elder brother, he still won't turn against him. But he at least tried his best to show the mirror to his elder brother. Karna didn't even try that with Duryodhan. If he had, for all you know, he may have even improved Duryodhan, right? Because a good friend is not just someone jo aapki haan mein haan milai, who just agrees with everything that you do.
But he
A
was
good
not
friend
in,
should ideally also be someone who tells you things which you need to hear, right? With the best of intentions. Sorry, Didi, you speak very well on loyalty. So if you
No, I mean, but the thing is, I mean, I totally agree. Loyalty is a slippery slope. What about disloyalty? What's the take on disloyalty? Now, disloyalty can be useful, it can be smart, it can be purposeful. The thing with disloyalty is it can never be beautiful. Whatever you say about Karn's, unquestioning attitude and his feeling of indebtedness, can we use the word ugly for Karn? Absolutely not. He was beautiful.
but I'm going to quote a line from your own book where you say, will our inner Karna conquer our Arjuna? Or will we allow Arjuna to slay the Karna that we are attached to? Where you want to get away from your own attachment for what you say is beautiful, the character, and to force yourself to a position where again you start interrogating what happens in the story. That's interesting. If I look at all the different kind of qualities that you've discussed in the book, from humility to loyalty to the price of anger, you have a chapter on that. You talk about envy. I would say the one thing that seems really fascinating is this whole idea of disobedience, or the idea of like following dharma, although it seems like you're not following dharma. Like when you talk about how Rama was actually technically disobedient to his father, but he was following dharma by going into exile, because so these are interesting themes that have been plucked out. Or when you say that respect for elders, but it's not a given. The elders also have to prove themselves and be worthy of respect.
very true.
That is a very modern view.
No, in fact, I say it's there in our ancient texts as well, because even in the ancient versions, Lord Krishna often disobeyed his elder brother, Lord Balrama. Even in the ancient versions, we all know Lord Dashrath did not want Lord Ram to leave. So in a way, Lord Ram was disobeying his father, but for dharma, right? So I think this concept comes down from our ancients, that what is always at the center is always dharma. Now, we were encouraged even to disobey the divine if it comes to that for dharma. We could even question the divine, as Ma Gandhari did to Lord Krishna in the Mahabharata. And Ma Gandhari was a human being. I don't know of any modern or medieval texts in other regions of the world where a human being could curse God and God would simply bow his head and say, as you say, mother. He's God himself, Lord Krishna. And Ma Gandhari curses him and he humbly just accepts it. It shows that we are encouraged that if you believe you are in Dharma, you have the right to do this as well. It's even with the divine. It comes with our elders as well. But it again boils down to the subject that we spoke earlier. Always with respect, always with grace, always with politeness. But if your elder is asking you to do something that in your opinion is adharma, no, then you should not do it. Right? And respectfully differ with your elder, but you should not do it. That's what our ancients teach us.
Yeah, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, where it talks about Ritam and Satyam as the two wings of the bird, and yoga as the tail that helps in the balance. Both have to happen. Both are crucial. And your very last chapter, which brings it down to pranayama and yoga and the idea of balance. I mean, I don't know if that was just sort of very subtly brought in there, but that's what it reminded me of, the Uttara Paksha and the Dakshina Paksha, the two wings of the bird,
Lovely.
Now, glad you saw. Sorry, go ahead, Didi.
No, lovely. I love that connection that Mani made.
But we see Vijay's face, so I think it's like time up.
No. Vijay is the hand of time clamping down on us. As it was there in the Mahabharata, "Main samay hu."
Actually, I saw this thing come up and I immediately said last chapter.
Yeah, I thought that was a wonderful note to end. Balance and the Uttara Paksha and Dakshina Paksha. And because in a way, what you said about respectful conversations and disagree without being disagreeable is exactly what we are trying to do in the festival. We have different points of view. We agree with some, we don't agree with others, but we respect them for what the work that they are doing, because we believe that they are doing it with all their sincerity, right? So, and that's why I think that was so beautifully brought out, and I particularly like the way in which you talked about the intentions, mala fide and bona fide intentions, because several comments have come up for that, and it says it's such a relevant thing to now discuss in these days, particularly the issue of bona fide and mala fide intentions. But also one of the things which was asked was, this is Amish's very contemporary interpretations of Indian classics, which makes it which make them very accessible. But at the same time, if I can connect it to what Mani was saying in the beginning, are we in a way compromising on the complexity of the issues?
Firstly, I must clarify, it is not just my take, it is Bhavna Di's and my take.
Yes. The authors.
Yes. One of the things that I believe, I think it was Albert Einstein who said that there's beauty. I mean, if complex concepts can be explained in a simple way and through simple speech, that can deepen understanding. I'm obviously paraphrasing Albert Einstein. I don't remember the exact words, but he spoke of understanding the concepts and then explaining it simply. Any conversation is a doorway into into some philosophies.
Yeah.
And as you specialize and go into different things, different specific areas of study, things become more complex. But one must attempt, and I certainly believe in this, to try and communicate things as simply as possible. It is in the interest of the communicators themselves, because only then can they hear different points of view, supporting or opposing, which will help the communicators also learn. That is the perspective of that's a point of a conversation. The point of a conversation is not to be tribal and convince the other guy of our point of view. The point of a conversation should also be that I can learn something from this conversation. And for that to happen, I must communicate my point of view in as simple a manner as possible, so that the other person gets it and then communicates his or her point of view in as simple a manner as possible, which will help me grow. That's a perspective. Always communicate in as simple and easy a manner as possible.
Yeah. Bhavna, you want to add something?
No, not really.
Yeah.
His answer was pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. See, I think this is something that that is so important today, because I think one of the takeaways was also where you said that uh, we never try to impose any particular point of view on anybody else, and it has always been a conversation all the time, a conversation, agree, disagree, and yet anybody else. I think that's a very important point for today. I think today's times we really need more and more conversations, not just among ourselves but across. I think that is the most important need today, that we speak across the lines rather than within the boundaries, because we tend to do that very often, and I think that is actually not benefiting anybody. So this is a wonderful session. And one more question that has come in the chat box is this is what is your quick take on the coming together of karma and dharma?
Didi?
So, coming together of karma and dharma. Dharma does not need, a counterpoint to exist. Dharma is in itself. Dharma can exist in nothingness. But the moment somethingness comes into being, from nothingness, there is a material birth of somethingness. Then karma comes into being. Karma cannot exist in the absence of dharma. Dharma can. Karma really is movement. Because the minute somethingness has come into being, then if dharma is the center, it's the spinal cord, then karma is that somethingness coming into movement, which is either moving towards dharma or away from dharma. Each piece of life. Karma is applicable for every piece of life, not just human beings. All pieces of life which, when in movement, are moving either towards or away from dharma. There are those pieces of life like Surya Dev that have almost attained their dharma in their karmic journey. It is highly unlikely that we find ourselves getting up one morning and discovering that the sun forgot to rise. It is not going to happen, because the sun in its karmic journey has almost fused with its dharma. We are all in the game, moving either away or towards. The thing with movement is it is not just external. This, of course, is movement at a very gross level. Conversation is movement. Our activities are movement. But really, the thoughts in our head are movement. The emotions in our heart are movement. Our breath is movement. And all these movements through conscious and aware living have to move towards dharma, which lies in balance, in harmony, and in beauty.
I think that beautifully explains, the concept of yoga that Mani was mentioning, of action and stasis, both being in balance. So, Amish, one last question for you. This is, of course, not related to this particular book, but this is somebody, Sharmila, who is asking, uh, could you quickly tell us what made you start the Shiva trilogy? That's going back in time, I know.
Yeah. And far back in time, the Shiva trilogy began, the journey began 15, 16 years ago, 2004, 2005. It began as a pure philosophy thesis. My family and I, we were all watching TV, and we discovered something interesting, which which triggered a debate, among us. We discovered something about the ancient Persians. That for the ancient Persians, in their perspective, the demons were called daivas and the gods were called ahuras, and in old Avastan, in the old Persian thing, Sir becomes her. That's how Sindhu became Hindu. So, which is actually, the pantheon is the exact opposite of the Indian pantheon. The devas are the gods. I hesitate to use the word demon for asuras. Demons is a very loaded concept. Asuras were not shown as green-skinned with horns in our ancient texts, only in Amar Chitakatha comics. But the point was that the pantheon was exactly reversed in ancient Persia as compared to India, which gave rise to a debate that, hell, if the ancient Indians, the ancient Persians had met, would we be calling each other evil? And if that happened, then who would be right? And then which gave rise to a philosophy that evil is perhaps something that exists beyond petty human rivalries. And if it does exist beyond petty human rivalries, then what is evil? So an answer occurred to me for that philosophy. That's how it began. That's how, as a pure philosophy thesis. Then it got converted into an adventure, the idea being to convey that philosophy through the adventure of the God I worshipped and worship. And in the words of my younger readers, with no disrespect to any other god or goddess, the story of the dude of the gods.
Although we are running out of time, we have actually run out of time, but this I thought was an interesting question that I should take up. It came just now. It says, would you say then that other than human beings, all other beings in nature are always in a state of dharma?
What a fantastic.
Good question.
Fantastic.
Didi, you go for this.
And it is only human beings who struggle to reach this balance that we are speaking of.
Fantastic question.
Yeah, I don't know the name. It just says Edge Circle. So anyway, so I thought that's a question that we cannot leave.
The sun, Surya Dev is in our, if we see the solar system as, the one life that we can all, be a part of. The solar system is our beehive, and all of us are bees in this beehive. Of course, in the ultimate things, realization, the entire universe is one beehive, and we are all bees in that one grand unity of a beehive. If we look at the solar system as the beehive, I would say Surya Dev is closest to Dharma. Plants, animals, the stones, certainly ahead of the game than human beings in realizing Dharma. Why? Because the human stage is the stage of possibility. It's when we, as pieces of life, understand awareness. Consciousness starts awakening. And when consciousness starts, it's easier, for the ant to be in Dharma to some extent, because the ant as a form of life has not been challenged by aware living. The beginning of awareness is where all the movement and the erratic chaos comes into being, because that is the journey then which begins in terms of reconnecting with harmony and balance, with a sense of awareness, with consciousness. There is the concept of, there is blind love and aware love. Blind love has its own beauty. Unaware harmony and dharma has its own purpose. We were all, in the dharmic sense, and even in the Darwinian sense of evolution, we were all plants and animals once upon a time. And we made that journey. And we've arrived at this human stage of possibility. Our onward gurus lie in the celestial, to move towards. We either enjoy the ride or suffer the ride.
I think that's a wonderful. Yes, Amish.
So if I can just add something to this, because if dharma is seen as harmony and balance, it's essentially there is a way to be in harmony and balance in ignorance, or harmony and balance with knowledge, with awareness, and that's the divine state of being. And the journey from here to here begins with confusion. Even the Bhagavad Gita, Arjun's journey begins with confusion. And as we are taught in our philosophy, actually confusion is the first step, which is good, right? The problem is that journey towards knowledge can take us away from harmony and take us away from dharma completely. So how do we make sure we use this opportunity and achieve that higher state of harmony, which is not just with ignorance, but with knowledge and awareness? Then we are with the divine. That would be moksha, which is in the Indian way, the ultimate aim.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm sure, the state of confusion that we are currently in, I think if you say that, that's a very optimistic way to end, because if confusion is good, so there is hope for us. Thank you so much, Amish. Always a pleasure to listen to you. Thank you, Bhavna.
Thank you.
Mani, thank you so much for taking this session, and from Varanasi, where you are, and joining us for us. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and we see you again in the next session. Thank you, Amish. Thank you, Bhavna, and thank you, Mani, once again.
పున్నాము వెన్నాల కోలు పూసి కాసిందే కోలు పున్నాము వెన్నాల కోలు పూసి కాసిందే కోలు నీరు నిమ్మల కింద గన్నెర్ల కింద వంగి పూలే రంగ కొంగందుతూనే వంగి